Hi, apes. So today we're going to do poetry mini lesson number 4, which is rhythm. And I really struggled with trying to figure out how to do that this year because while I need you to know rhythm for the test, there's always like 1 or 2 questions on that AP test about rhythm. It's the hardest poetry mini lesson that we do. And it's normally really nice to have us all in the same room so we can, I just can't imagine teaching this like over a Zoom meeting. So I figured the next best thing, since I have some online kids and some in-person kids, is to do a video. So this way you can go back, you can re-listen to things, you can back up the video if you need to, however you want to do it. So we're going to take some notes today. And I will try to make this as painless as possible. Understand that this is confusing stuff, and we're gonna try our very best. My note sheet looks just a little bit different, and so you'll just have to kind of put things where you need to put things. But I'm gonna kind of go through these terms. So we're talking about rhythm in poetry. So rhythm in poetry, I'm going to change the font size so that it's smaller. Rhythm is the recurrence. Man, and I spelled it wrong. There we go. Starting off real good. Reoccurrence of stressed and unstressed sounds. And maybe we could even make that a little bigger. Let's go to like 16. There we go. So when we're talking about rhythm, it's the recurrence of stressed and unstressed sounds in a line of poetry. So then the question is, what's a stress, right? I feel a lot of stress, but what's a stress in a poem? So it's placing more emphasis on one syllable than another. And we do this normally in speech, and people, poets will write a line of poetry a certain way so that you read it and place stresses on certain syllables over other syllables. So then we mark up stresses in lines of poetry when we're looking at rhythm. So the mark that we used for a stress symbol is this little like slash above a syllable in a line of poetry. And then what we do for unstressed is a U. So we have stressed and unstressed symbols. So when we're marking a line of poetry, that's what we do. And then for meter, the term meter is the rhythmic pattern of stresses. So when we're talking about rhythm, we're talking about meter and what is the pattern of the stresses. The term prosody is all the metrical elements in a poem make up prosody. So what we would say is, all right, we're going to look at the prosody of this poem. And we're looking at all of the metric elements, the rhythm, the stresses, all of that, the meter. We're looking at all those things. So if someone ever says, and on the test, if they say, look at the prosody of this poem, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the rhythm, we're looking at the stresses, we're looking at the meter, and all those things make up its prosody. And then the act of counting the stresses is called scansion. So this is measuring the stresses in a line of poetry. You're doing that to determine its meter, its metrical pattern. And then look, this is supposed to be foot, not food. I must have been hungry or something when I was writing that. So this is foot. That's funny. Okay, so this is foot, right? So this is the metrical unit by which a line of poetry is measured. So just like we have, we measure other things in feet, we measure poems by feet as well. And there are a whole bunch of different type of feet, but I'm only going to give you the 5 most common that are probably going to show up on the test. And really the one that you need to remember the most is I am. So I'm going to draw now. So the pattern for an I am is unstressed followed by a stressed syllable. And the example that we're going to give is the word away. And you can see with the word away, we have an unstressed syllable at the beginning and we have a stressed because we put more stress on the end of that word, away, right? It has more stress to it. So that's our example word. The next one is a trochee, which is the opposite. So it's a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. And the example we're going to use is the word lovely. So we can see that we place more emphasis on the beginning of that word, lovely, lovely, right? Away, lovely. And you kind of have to overemphasize some of these stresses when you're first starting out, but eventually you'll get it. Anapest is a 3-syllable foot. So it's unstressed, unstressed, stressed. And the example we're going to give is understand. Understand. And we have unstressed, unstressed, stressed. Understand, right? We put more emphasis on the end of that word, understand. Dactyl is the opposite. It's stressed, unstressed, unstressed. And we're going to use the word desperate. Desperate. So desperate. You can hear how we place more emphasis on the beginning of that word than the end of that word. The last one we have is a spondee, and spondees are different. They are 2 stressed syllables right next to each other. They're usually 1-syllable words that are next to each other. So all these other ones have been, a multi-syllable word in some cases, or the foot pattern has been within one word. Not always, but oftentimes it is. And this one is oftentimes in multiple words. So the example we're going to give is dead set. Dead set. So if those words, are both there, it's a spondee. And you're not ever going to see a line of poetry that's all spondees, right? It's not going to be that. But you're going to see iambic lines, you're going to see trochaic lines and stuff like that. And then every once in a while, they would throw in a spondee for some reason. Sometimes it's to emphasize a point, sometimes it's to break up the rhythm. But usually spondees are never on their own. They're always as part of another line. Now, when we look at these and we're measuring, right, we're doing the scansion, we can say that, there's iambs in this line, and you always look at what the majority of the line is. So if you have a line with 5 feet in it and most of them are iambs, but then there's a spondee right at the end of the line, we would still call that line an iambic line because the majority of it is iambs. All right. So if we scroll down, I don't believe that you have these, right? Which is fine. But I'm going to kind of go through and do the scansion on these lines, so you can see what we're doing when we're measuring scansion. So this is a line of poetry. What kept his eyes from giving back the gaze. And this is an iambic line. So we're going to mark it up. What kept his eyes from giving back the gaze. We can see it's an iambic line, right? We have 5 iambs there. Then in the trochaic line, it's opposite. He was louder than the preacher. So he was louder than the preacher, right? Backwards. And I'm not doing great with my symbols, but it's really hard to write on the screen. So then we have an anapestic line. And remember, anapests are 3-syllable feet. So I am called to the front of the room. So we have I am called to the front of the room. You can see that in each of those feet, right, we have multiple words, but the last word in each of the feet is getting the emphasis. I am called to the front of the room, right? And then our dactylic line is once again 3, and it's sing it all merrily. So sing it all merrily. You can see that sing has the more emphasis, and the beginning of merrily, m, has the more emphasis. And now we have an example of a spondee. And this, just like I said, there's only one spondee in there. So it has our example dead set, but then the rest of the line is iambic. So against the plan, he went away. And when you do scansions, oftentimes you'll put in those horizontal lines, no, not horizontal, vertical lines, to break up the feet so you can see where the feet are. And then above the lines you mark. And so when you're doing the scansion on a line of poetry, you're marking in between the feet, and then you're also marking above. And when I was in college and an English major, I had to take a whole class that was just rhythm and poetry, and it was really hard. Man, I had a hard time in that class. All right, so now this next should be really easy. So when we look, we have these sort of lines, but then we also need to look at the meter, like how many of them are there, how many feet are in each line. So they have words for those, right? So monometer is just 1 foot. And then we have dimeter, which, should be easy. That's 2. And then we have trimeter. How many feet are in a tri? There's 3. And then we have tetrameter, which is 4. And pentameter, which is 5. And hexameter, which is 6. I think you're getting it, right? Heptameter is 7. And octameter is 8. And you could keep going, right? But that's probably you're going to be sticking with trimeter, tetrameter, and pentameter, maybe some hexameter. Because if people are writing with a rhythm in their poems, a lot of modern poetry doesn't do that anymore. This is like older poetry. They're probably writing iambs, and they're probably writing in pentameter. So we put them together as iambic pentameter. So we're using the iamb feet, and there's 5 of them in a line. That was Shakespeare's jam, was iambic pentameter. All his plays had it, his poetry, his sonnets, all iambic pentameter. But it could be iambic tetrameter, right? We're going to look at a poem that's a little different later to have you practice. Okay. So then just a couple more terms and we'll be done with these. So a rising meter means that we move from unstressed to stressed. And our examples of that are iambic and anapestic. So it's always the lines that are moving from unstressed to stressed. So that's iambic and anapestic, right? Unstressed to stressed. Falling meters then would be the opposite, where we're moving from stressed to unstressed. And our 2 examples are trochaic and dactylic. So we're moving from stressed to unstressed. We can see in our examples, trochaic has stressed, unstressed, so dactyl, same thing. Okay, now we get masculine and feminine, and these are super sexist. So a masculine ending is a line that ends with a stressed syllable. So to have a masculine ending, you're going to have a stressed syllable. Oh, I need to go to the drawing tool. There we go. All right, you have to have a stressed syllable at the end, right? And then you can see that the feminine one is going to be opposite, unstressed. Now, I don't know why that's the way it is. I don't know if they're saying that men have more stress. I don't feel like that's necessarily the case, especially in parenting. Like, I feel like women have way more stress than men, right? So feminine endings are lines that end with an extra unstressed syllable. And we'll see a line like that. So I have 2 examples right here. And the masculine line is iambs, right? So the damp, air chilled, and spread. Awesome. Then this feminine line is weird because you can see there's this little tail on the end. So this one is a little different. So this one has a mix. So it's an iamb at the beginning, the sand. Then we have a 3-1. So at my feet grew cold, right? Because there's not as much stress on that So it has that extra unstressed syllable. So now we have a caesura. So a caesura is a pause in a poetic line. And that usually happens with punctuation. So we're talking at periods, we're talking question marks, we're talking exclamation points and semicolons. Because semicolons, because of the way they work, they act as end punctuation. They act as a stop, right? And when we mark a caesura, we're going to put two up and down lines to show that there's a caesura there. And that's how you mark a caesura. You're probably not going to do that very often. An end-stopped line is a line that has a pause at its end. And just like we said with a caesura, it has a caesura at its end. So it has a period or a question mark or an exclamation point or a semicolon. The opposite of that is an enjambed line, where a line ends without a pause and continues into the next line. And when we read poetry, it's really important to pay attention to those end stopped line and those enjambed lines, because oftentimes our eyes and our brains think, okay, this is the end of the line, I need to take a breath, but you're not supposed to, right? You're supposed to continue on. And sometimes poets will set the line up so that when you read one line of poetry, it means something, but then if you come down and you read the next line, as you connect it back up in your brain, it morphs and it means something totally different. So we'll see that often in poetry, is that people play with these enjambed lines and to make their poems mean different things. All right, so those are all your notes. And then what you're going to do, I have a link for this assignment, is you're going to go to this website, which is the University of Virginia. This is For Better or For Verse. For Better for Verse. And you are going to look up, we're going to go by difficulty, and we're going to find one of the most easy poems. The one we're looking for is I Look Into My Glass by Thomas Hardy. So I would just sort by difficulty and then kind of scroll down, and we're doing a really easy one. So you're going to click I Look Into My Glass. And then what you can do with this is you can practice doing the scansion on it. So what you can do is you can see how I can move my cursor and kind of highlight above things, and I can highlight in the line. So I can go ahead and fill in things. So this, I look into my glass. So this is probably have feet of 2 beat, right? I look into my glass. And so I put the feet marking in there, where the feet are. And I can come over here and click that, the middle one, the check feet, and it's right. And then I can go above it, and I can say, okay, I think this is probably iambs. And if you click once, it gives it a stress. If you click a second time, it takes it off and makes it unstressed. So I'm going to go like that, and then I'm going to go unstressed, stressed, and I'm going to go unstressed, stressed, and I'm going to check this. If you get a star, that's okay. If you get a green check mark, even better. The stars just want you to like think about it a little bit more. It's almost right, but I'm okay with stars. And then you're going to come over to this triangle and you're going to say, okay, it's primarily iambic. And how many feet? There's 3. So iambic trimeter. And then I got a check mark. So I want you to go on your assignment and I want you to try this poem. I do know that there are a couple errors in a couple lines. And I believe that it's this line right here, my heart has shrunk as thin. And then I believe the very last line has an error in this poem. So I want you to get the majority of green check marks. I want you to be careful, though, because there are a couple spondies in this poem. So if you're not getting a line right and you're like freaking out, try a spondee, because Thomas already has put a couple spondies in here to put emphasis on some words. Primarily, like this line right here, line 3, has a spondee in it. And it's interesting why he put that spondee there, because it emphasizes something a little bit different. So then when you're done with this poem, you're going to go ahead and take a screenshot of this and you're going to submit that to this poetry mini lesson to show me that you tried it out. And, I'm going to be real forgiving on this because it's real hard and we're just trying it. Okay. We're experimenting. I want you to play with this poem and try your very best because the rhythm is really difficult. And if you just get the littlest bit of, I know iambic pentameter and I can kind of do this, marking up above it for rhythm and do the scansion, I think you're going to be good to go. So if you have any questions, let me know. And if you have any problems, let me know too. All right, good luck.